Bianca Golodriga, Washington Post opinion writer and MSNBC contributor Jonathan Capehart, and Republican strategist and former spokesman for Ted Cruz's campaign, Ron Nehring. But let's get now to Hallie Jackson at the White House for an update on exactly what's the latest, Hallie?
Yeah, hey there, Mike. Good to see you. Actually, sitting 30 feet down the hall from you, not at the White House today, but we'll be there tomorrow. That said, obviously been talking with folks and our teams down in Washington because this is a significant moment, right, in time. Seeing these emails, seeing the release, watching how the White House and how members of the Trump team and people close to the president are handling this. We got our real first public indication of this today. There had been a lot of talk that we've been hearing privately that the president, as we know, and I'll tell you, legitimately, the West Wing very frustrated by the stories that are coming out. They really do feel frustrated at the discussion, at the sort of time that the media spends writ large on these stories. And you saw that, I think, expressed today by Sarah Huckabee Sanders when she was talking about how the president sees some of this. I want you to listen to what she had to say. Listen, since it wasn't on camera.
I think that the president is, I would say, frustrated with the process of the fact that this continues to be an issue, and he would love for us to be focused on things like Justin mentioned, the economy, on health care, on tax reform, on infrastructure, and that's the place that his mind is, and that's what he'd like to be discussing.
That is the line, and it is very similar to a line that we hear again and again in that briefing room and on the road with the president about the president wants to talk about policy. The thing is, Mike, and as you and the panel knows, when you have the president's son releasing emails that confirm that he met with somebody who was identified as a Russian government lawyer, accepted that meeting, told then the campaign chair at the time and the president's son-in-law and now top advisor about that meeting, and they all attended, that is significant. And that is something that is going to be dominating, I think, a lot of the discussion, not just here in New York and Washington, around the country, but also on Capitol Hill.
Bianca, the level of frustration, as Hallie just pointed to, in the White House probably is palpable if you're working around the White House. It's palpable here in this newsroom. Can you imagine the level of frustration the president has not only with the process, but with his oldest son?
Well, it depends on whether you take the president for his word that he didn't know about this meeting. I think a lot of people are trying to do a timetable and figure out where the president was. We know that he was in New York. We know that he was in Trump Tower. So you go from there. The chairman of his campaign, his son, his son-in-law were all in this meeting. It's kind of hard to imagine, especially given what we now know through this email, that the president was not made aware of this either before or coming out of the meeting.
Ken, I don't mean to pick on you, okay, right out of the box, but, you know, how long can Republicans hide from this?
Well, you know, so I have a little bit different take on this issue. So were the Russians involved in trying to influence the U.S. election? Absolutely, no doubt about that. Was this part of that? I'm really doubtful about that. You read this email from this music promoter, right? And this is not how the FSB or the Russian GRU operates. I mean, this guy looks like a clown, right? And so he sends this email to Donald Trump Jr. saying, hey, we have access to these Russian state secrets. Do you want some? This is not how the Russian intelligence services operate. So I think there's much more information to be known here. But this, to me, seems more like an amateurish attempt by a couple of clowns to curry favor with the Trump, with people who they happen to know, through Donald Trump's business dealings. When we talk about this Goldstone guy as some, former business partner of Donald Trump, that kind of evokes this image that this is someone who has his, his act together. This guy is not a serious intelligence operative.
That's not the issue, whether there was gravitas attached to this person or attached to what we've been previously talking about as the regime coming down from Putin colluding. This is the president's son, the president's inner circle, possibly the president, understanding the intent of the meeting was to get a contribution, not a contribution of money, but a contribution of information, damaging information against his opponent from the Russian government. That is against the law. So regardless of where it's coming from on the outside, the intent on the inside and the actual action and their explanation of, well, first, it didn't happen, and secondly, nothing came of the meeting, is irrelevant. And how many more days are we going to open a show at 9 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock with the next Russian drip? I mean, how, before we just kind of go, this is pretty clear what's happening.
The drips are going to keep coming because the president and his administration will not sit down and do what Hillary Clinton did back in, 92, 93 with her pink press conference when there were all the questions about the Rose Law Firm and Whitewater. She sat for a little more than an hour and answered every single question that was posed to her by the press. If the president were to do that and to honestly sit to the American people through the press and do it live and have people listen to talk about these things, maybe the White House and the president wouldn't be so frustrated, and maybe the White House could have the nation focus on the things they want them to focus on, but they're not, as long as the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, seemingly hourly, come out with one more drip, one more shoe.
Well, but back to the basic, the root of this latest story, the release of Donald Jr.'s emails. Ron, I know your view, you just expressed it, but there is another view out there that this is exactly how the Russian intel operation operates. You know, but hold on to your thought, because I think Ken Delaney, NBC Intelligence and National Security reporter Ken Delaney joins us now. Ken, the Russian lawyer comes over here for a meeting with Donald Trump Jr., joined by Manafort and Jared Kushner. Is it possible, in your view, based upon your experience as well as your reporting, that she's just there to troll whatever interest there might be in the Trump campaign about colluding with the Russians to get information?
Well, Mike, I mean, first I think we need to take a step back and remember what we're dealing with here. For months, the Trump campaign has been saying, the Trump administration has been saying there's no evidence of collusion. Show us evidence of collusion. And now we have, for the first time in black and white, evidence that they were put on notice back as far as June of 2016 that the Russian government was interested in getting Donald Trump elected. That is really important, and I think is a game changer in this Russia saga. Now, to your question, former intelligence experts I've talked to today, former CIA officers who've served against the Russia target, say this is exactly how the Russian services operate.
Right.
They send people who may be dupes, who may not even understand exactly what they're doing, to see whether they can infiltrate. This could have been a dangle. This could have been an attempt by the Russian intelligence services to see how the Trump team would react. And how did they react? They took the meeting. They reacted with open arms and said, and they were happy to have more.
And it wasn't such a dupe in that this woman, Veselnitskaya, and Vladimir Putin have one thing in common, and that's that they want to get rid of the Magnitsky Act sanctions. They want the sanctions to be lifted. That was the premise for her meeting to come here. That's where the orphans and adopting Russian babies came into the conversation. And this is a thorn, one of the biggest thorns in Vladimir Putin's side. So I understand your optics, but you're not going to have Sergei Lavrov, the head of the FSB, or the head of the GRU coming to Trump Tower. Putin has plausible deniability, and they have one intent and purpose, and that is lifting these sanctions.
I think the notion that this person was operated at the behest of Russian intelligence and puts in an email, hey, I've got a bunch of state secrets, do you want some? I think that's highly unlikely. I think that we should take a look from the standpoint of a presidential campaign. There are people who come forth all the time of, I have secret information on this person, I have secret information on that person.
But not from Russia.
There's absolutely no doubt that
Russia.
There's no doubt that they should not have taken the meeting.
Okay.
That is absolutely sure. And you know who should have known better? Paul Manafort should have known better.
What should they have done? Call the FBI is what they should have done.
What you do at a minute, what you start with is that request for a meeting goes into a drawer and is never heard from again. Oh, we just can't, do the meeting. And then you're supposed to contact the FBI. Now, when you're a seasoned political operative, like one of those three people in the room, absolutely you should know that. The other two people have never been involved in a political campaign before. We're not going to expect that they're going to know, every little in and out.
Let me disagree with that on two levels. Number one, I've never run for office, and as you well know, certainly
never will.
Certainly not the brightest guy in the room. Yeah. I would certainly know if our number one geopolitical enemy was reaching out to me on dirt on some of my rings. I would know that's wrong. And it's also very typical of the Trump DNA, which is we play above the law, above the rules. Had they even if they were seasoned veterans, and once again, this is speculation, they still would have behaved. And one interesting quote, 6 weeks later, when Don Trump Jr., just another lie, was asked about Clinton's campaign claims that the Russians were helping his father, this was his quote, "It's disgusting. It's so phony, I can't think of bigger lies." This is fire.
Well, let's bring in Chief White House correspondent from the New York Times and MSNBC analyst Peter Baker, who has literally been sent all around the world by the New York Times, including time spent as Moscow bureau chief. So, Peter, let me ask you, is Vladimir Putin in Moscow tonight saying this is just an incredible success beyond our wildest dreams? We have the entire American political system in chaos.
Well, I do think to the extent that he has sown disruption in our system and confusion and have us,